Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I'll be taking a look at the AMBT, which is the latest World War II premium tank to hit the battlefield. This was released yesterday on the 19th of July. This video, as you can see, has been recorded on the 20th of July, and I'll be giving you a full rundown of the tank statistics. I have three gameplays for you, bottom, mid and top tier in this tank, and I'll be comparing it over here to the Progetto 46 and the Bisonte C45, two Italian auto-reloading tanks, premium tanks, and it gives you a good indication of how the AMBT holds up. This is an American Tier 8 medium auto-reloading tank. It is the first auto-reloading tank for the American tech tree in World of Tanks console, and on paper it looks pretty poor from its statistics, but we'll have a look and we'll see how it stacks up to its competition on the battlefield. But first, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everyone for sticking around while I had 2 weeks unintended time off to deal with some in real life stuff. I'm back now, and hopefully the content should be coming out pretty thick and fast. So we'll get stuck straight into having a look at this tank, and as you can see, here it is here. It's got a sort of centralized turret, so in the middle of the hull, which is a very weird design. It's got a very large lower plate and a very well angled upper plate. Looks like it might have some side skirt and some side armor, so you can side scrape out of. The turret looks quite narrow from the front, so hopefully this will have some good armor, and we'll check out on Tanks GG the armor layout in just a little bit. But we're going to scroll on down here to have a look at the price first, and as you can see, from the get-go, from the 19th of July, it was available in the primed, loaded and the base bundle. So the primed being 8,950 gold, the fully loaded being 8,550 gold, and the base bundle, just a tank on its own, 7,150 gold. So it's a fairly reasonable price for a tier 8 premium medium tank. However, I'm sure tanks like this or better tanks will be available for less gold in deals of the week, that kind of thing. So yeah, you're going to have to decide whether this is worth it for you. That's a 40% savings on the fully loaded, 30% savings on the base bundle, and you get 50% savings apparently on the prime bundle, but of course that comes with some equipment and some boosts to go alongside this tank. So instead of looking through the statistics on this page, we're going to hop over to the Excel spreadsheet here, have a look at the stats of the AMBT and compare it to the Italian medium Tier 8 tank, the Progetto 46, and the Italian Tier 8 heavy tank, the Bisonte C45. As you can see, it's all color-coded, so green is the best statistic, red's the worst, and orange is somewhere in between, and yellow is the updated statistics. I'm struggling to say that word again with the, I don't know why I just don't say stats, but yeah, with the command and equipment setup added onto it, but we'll have a look at that just a little bit later on. Bear in mind that this is a Tier 8 medium tank. That's a heavy tank, so some of the statistics might seem a little bit they're going to contrast in some areas quite a lot, but you have to take into account obviously the armor, that kind of thing, and the concealment. But it gives you a good indication of how this thing stacks up against some of its competitors in terms of premium tanks that are auto reloading. So from the get-go, we'll have a look at the hit points. Unfortunately, the AMBT falls quite a lot behind at 1,300 hit points. It's 100 less than the Tier 8 Italian auto-reloader, the Progetto 46. It has 1,400, and it's also 100 less than the Bisonte C45, which also has 1,400. So that's quite a lot of hit points on the Progetto 46 for a medium tank. That's actually good for that tank, but bad for the AMBT. And it's also bad news in terms of the view range. The AMBT only has 380 meters view range, which is absolutely awful. It's 10 meters less than the Progetto 46, but it is the same as the Bisonte C45. Bear in mind that is a heavy tank though, so you'll be hoping for a better view range on a medium tank, so you're going to have to try and boost that up in any way you can, whether that's using equipment or commander skills, and you'll see how I get to my 452.41 meters in just a little bit, and even that's pretty poor, but that's the best I can do trying to get my speed up and everything else about the tank. And talking of speed, we'll have a look at the mobility now. As you can see, most of it's covered in orange, so it's a little bit better than the Bisonte C45, but it falls massively behind the Progetto 46. It has a 650 horsepower engine, a power to weight ratio of 18.06. It's limited to 40 kilometers an hour forwards, which is really, really frustrating. 14 kilometers an hour backwards, which can cause a lot of problems for this tank. And its traverses aren't brilliant either on its hull and turret at 32 degrees a second on the hull and 28 degrees a second on the turret. So mobility wise, not great news. The power to weight ratio isn't all bad, it's only a little bit worse than the Peugeot 46. However, it's only limited to 40 forwards and 14 back, which can be extremely frustrating for a medium tank. So you do find yourself sort of lacking behind with the heavies at the start of the battle, struggling to get the sort of job done on the clear up at the end of the battle, and also to get into positions first to spot out your opponents. So you're going to want to do everything you can to improve this mobility and also the traverses, and you'll see how I do that with my commander and equipment setup in just a little bit. But you'll see here the Peugeot 46 is miles better in terms of its top speed, traverses, and its power to weight ratio, and the Basonte as a heavy tank is quite far behind in terms of its power to weight, but it does have a better top speed forwards and backwards, and it has sort of comparable traverse speeds for a heavy tank. So you'd be hoping the AMBT would have really good armour, and we'll see if that's the case when we look at Tanks GG and we take a look at the armour layout. But first we're going to talk about the guns on all of these tanks. The AMBT has a 105mm 3-shot auto-reloader, which is capable of dealing a burst damage of 1080 damage. The Peugeot 46 has a 90mm 3-shot auto-reloader, and the Basonte C45 has a 3-shot auto-reloader, which is also a 105, same as the AMBT. So the AMBT, it fires APCR as its standard and its premium round, and it has a third round, which is an HE round. The penetration on the standard is 215, which is pretty damn poor for a standard penetration round. However, this does jump up massively to 278mm of penetration on its premium APCR, which is really nice, and it does help you fight those tier 10 tanks. And the HE penetration is 53mm, and the alpha damages you get with these are 360 on the standard and premium APCR, and 420 on the HE rounds. This is comparable to the Basonte C45, 360 on standard and the premium heat rounds that tank has, and it has a little bit more alpha damage on its HE at 440, which is 20 more alpha damage than the HE rounds on the AMBT. On the Peugeot 46, it has a 90mm with 240 alpha damage on its standard and premium, and 320 on the HE. In terms of the penetration, then you can see that the pen on the Basonte is the best in class in terms of the standard rounds, and it's best in terms of its HE rounds, and it's somewhere in between on its premium rounds. But the AMBT does have the best premium rounds in this comparison, and as a 90mm is expected, the Peugeot 46 has the worst penetration and damage out of all of these tanks. In terms of shell velocity on these rounds then, and that's one really good news for the AMBT, it's 1278 meters a second on the standard rounds, which is really nice for leading at mid to long ranges, and it jumps up to 1492 meters a second on its premium rounds, which is absolutely wonderful. And as you can see, these are green. It's the best in this comparison, and it's much better than the Peugeot 46 and the Basonte C45. Yeah, these are fantastic statistics. Unfortunately, the penetration at long ranges with the APCR will drop off dramatically, so carry plenty of premium APCR if you can. I've just reverted to firing full APCR after I've got the gameplay for this video, just because it still makes a profit and I'm having relatively decent games. But yeah, take a good mix. I'd say half and half would be pretty good starting point. One thing to mention with this auto reloader, it's a 3-second intra-click reload, the same as the Basonte C45, and as the Peugeot 46 has a 90mm gun, it's 2 seconds in between the 3 shots for that tank. Just a note on the auto reloading mechanic, if you aren't aware of that already, it's somewhere in between a single fire and an auto-loading tank. So the shells reload one by one, meaning that you can store up and use it like an autoloader and do that burst damage of 1080 damage, or you can fire it like a single shot or a two-shot autoloader, but it does mean that your DPM differs, and we'll have a look at that just Now actually we're going to head on to looking at the DPM and the gun handling of the AMBT. So you'll see here that it's got red in terms of its aim time. It's the worst in this comparison, joint with the WoTC 45 at 2.7 seconds. This is really long. You're going to want to do everything you can to get that down to a respectable level, because you don't want that blooming out in between your shells. Because of the really god-awful DPM this tank has, you're going to want to be making every single shot count. The accuracy isn't much better. It's the mid-ground in this comparison at 0.38, with the Passante C45 the worst and the Peugeot 46 the best at 0.33. And now we're going to get onto the DPM of the shells. So once you are fully loaded and you have all shells in your magazine, if you just continuously fire the first shell or the third shell to reload, your DPM will be 1350, which is absolutely terrible, but it is the best in this comparison. If you are continuously firing the second shell or the middle shell in the chamber, your DPM will be 1136, so that's already dropped dramatically, and that's absolutely terrible. And then if you continuously use it as an autoloader, your DPM basically turns out to be 1028.57, which is the best in this comparison, but again, it is absolutely terrible. Gun handling wise, the Peugeot 46 is the best. DPM wise, if you're going to be using this as an autoloader, if you like to play these Autoreloaders as more of an autoloading bursty damage kind of gameplay, which I highly don't recommend you play it, because it reduces your DPM to this. However, it is the best for doing that if you so wish, and maybe that will suit some of the newer players out there while they get to grips with the auto reloading mechanic. However, if you're an experienced player and you're looking for an auto reloader that has a relatively good DPM for an auto reloader in terms of its first shell or the third shell that you reload in the magazine, then 1350 is pretty good. And yeah, firing it as a single shot, you can boost up your damage, and then you can use your autoloader or the autoloading capacity later in the game to boost up your damage numbers and finish targets off. The Passante C45 is the worst in this comparison, whereas if you want to just use 2 shells at a time, the Peugeot 46 will come out on top. And here's the reload in seconds for you for each of the shells. So the first shell that you reload when you're empty is 21 seconds for 360 alpha damage, which is absolutely insane. It's a very, very long time. It's 19 seconds for the second shell, and for the third shell that you're going to reload, it is 16 seconds. So you're going to want to do everything you can to get that reload down with your commander and equipment setup. And lastly, we'll look at the ammo capacity and the gun depression. 36 rounds of ammunition, which is really low, the worst in this comparison, and I've come close to running out even on a tank with this bad DPM. This is really frustrating, and it means that you have to think carefully about how many premium rounds you can afford to carry. And then we're going to have a look at the gun depression. It's 9 degrees, which is pretty good. It's on par with the Peugeot 46, but the Passante C45 has 1 degree more at 10 degrees. 9 degrees is pretty good, but on some ridge lines it's just frustrating. That one degree extra that the Passante C45 has can make all the difference between being able to get a shot on target or not. And one thing to note is that the gun elevation is terrible at 10 degrees, meaning that if you're trying to shoot up and you're going downhill, it can be really frustrating, so watch out for that. Whereas the Peugeot 46 and Passante C45 have 20 degrees of elevation. So that's all of the statistics for these tanks. You can see that it's got pretty good DPM for an auto reloader, but pretty poor if you're comparing it to every single tier 8 premium tank in the game. You'll see that mobility wise it's pretty poor for a medium tank, and you won't want to boost it. The engine power, getting up to that 40 kilometers an hour top speed or 14 kilometers an hour reverse speed can be okay. However, it's really annoying when you can't go any faster, and you're a medium tank that some heavies are even faster, especially when you get to tiers 9 and tiers 10. And now we're going to have a look at the armour and see how it holds up to the Passante C45, which is the heavy tank. So we're here now in Tanks GG. This is the AMBT and its armour layout. I've got this looking as if I was fighting an Object 140, so I'm going to show you how each of the rounds on the Object 140 fares at tier 10 Soviet medium tank, just to give you an idea, because you're going to come up against plenty of tier 9 and tier 10 tanks. I was fighting in mainly tier 10 battles yesterday when I was trying this tank out, so you're going to see how this tank bounces shells, and from the get-go you'll see that this thing has an extremely well sloped upper plate with some a lot of the mass of that upper plate is an auto ricochet angle. However, when you're looking at this dead on, this lower plate is absolutely terrible and absolutely ginormous, even though it does have that angling. When tanks are in front of you, you're looking at an effective armor range of about 146 millimeters, so that's going to be easily penetrated even when you're angling at 45 degrees. The effective armor angling only gets up to about sort of 200 at the max sort of level, and that's only going to be really useful against tier 6 tanks when you are top tier. When you are looking at this tank dead on, the upper plate is going to be an auto ricochet for most low caliber guns, and especially if you angle like that, people are just going to be ricocheting off this because of that sort of 76 degree angle on that tank, or when you're looking at it dead on, the angle is about sort of 76 to 77 degrees, meaning that it's going to be an auto ricochet for all of the low caliber guns. However, when you fire heat, that negates some of the angling, and it means that looking dead on, you're going to be able to go through it. This is the Object 140's heat round from its 100mm gun. It has 330mm of penetration, and you can see the difference when you change from its APCR to its heat. It means that much more of the upper plate is penable, and even more parts of the turret. So if you're firing APCR at this tank, the main weak points are going to be your lower plate, the turret ring, which is absolutely ginormous and a pretty easy target to hit from even mid-ranges, and if you're up close, this is an easy shot to hit. It also has a cupola, which is 81 or 82mm of effective armor. In terms of its side armor, it's 40mm all across the side, with a little bit of side skirt armor at 10mm of spaced armor. You can side scrape against low caliber rounds and sort of APCR rounds, but as soon as you switch to heat, you can see that this is all penable down here, and large caliber guns like on the Jagdpanzer E100, T124 will just overmatch your side armor. So you can side scrape against lower tiered opponents or low caliber rounds, or people that are firing APCR to a certain point, like this. But you have to bear in mind this big triangle here, which is the front of the tank. It has these sort of like pike bits here. When you're side scraping, these are going to be a weak point. So if someone's side scraping you and you've got a low caliber, or you're firing APCR, or both, shoot this part, or just go for the turret or the lower plate if they show you that. I'll just show you the effect of the gun depression, which is 9 degrees all the way around. You'll see that when you're sort of facing its gun depression, the upper plate is going to be an auto ricochet, but you do have pretty good shots into the turret ring. The cupola will be hard to hit, but you still can hit that, and that goes up to about 100mm of effective armor. But the turret will be pretty damn decent and very troll, and if you hit the sort of left and right of the turret at this angle when it's using its gun depression on a ridge line, you will bounce off. However, when you're sort of looking up at it and it's not using its gun depression, then yeah, you're going to be able to go through the left and right of the mantlet if you have between sort of 240 to 260mm of penetration, and there are these two little bits here that you can penetrate to the top left and top right of the AMBT. So it's a little bit troll, pretty good turret, large weak point on the turret wing, lower plate and the cupola. You can side scrape against low caliber rounds and people that are firing especially sort of APCR and low caliber rounds, but as soon as they're firing heat or they've got a large caliber gun, side scraping is a no-no, and you're going to want to do everything you can to use your 9 degrees of gun depression. So now we're going to head over and have a look at my commander and equipment setup. I'll talk you through that, and then we're going to get stuck into the gameplay so you can see how this tank performs. So in terms of my equipment, I run advanced loader, I run improved ventilation and traction system. You might want to move out the approved ventilation for the advanced optics to get up to a reasonable spotting distance. However, I choose to run the vents just to boost that DPM that little bit more. Advanced loader because I want to improve the DPM, of course, and ventilation and traction system, I should say, sorry, just so I can get up my traverse speeds and my top speed by that little bit extra. And then my commander setup, I run a 6th sense, border leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, run and gun, situational awareness, and camouflage expertise. And you might want to take out camouflage expertise and use track mechanic or general mechanic, because this tank gets armor wrapped quite a lot. And if you're side scraping and you get tracked, you might want to be able to sort of repair everything just that little bit quicker. But I choose to run the camouflage expertise just to improve my camouflage that little bit extra, so it kind of negates a little bit of the terrible view range this tank has, and you can get forwards and try and spot for yourself. So with my commander and equipment set up in situ, it gives me a view range of 452.41 meters, which is okay, but it's by no means good. You're going to get outspotted by a lot of medium tanks, light tanks and tank destroyers, and even some heavy tanks. But if you sort of play as a kind of support brawling tank, which I like to do in this tank, supporting your heavies, then that is kind of negated by your playstyle. With my commander and equipment set up, I've now got a top speed of 44 km an hour forwards, 15.4 km an hour backwards, and my traverse speeds have improved to 35.2 degrees a second on the hull and 34.11 degrees a second on the turret, which isn't great, but it does make it a little bit better, and it means that you can outrun some of the slower heavy tanks, or sort of heavy tanks that did keep up with you at 40 km an hour, but now they can, and it just means that you can get to the battlefield a little bit quicker, and it just feels a little bit more responsive when things are circling you and you're trying to get around the battlefield. And in terms of my gun handling and DPM, I now have a gun aim time of 2.44 seconds, an accuracy of 0.3, and my DPMs are now 1846 if I'm just firing the third shell that you reload, or the first shell in the magazine over and over and over again as a single shot tank. If I'm just using 2 rounds at a time, my DPM goes to 1553.96. And if I use it in the autoloading capacity with the 3 rounds for that 1080 clip damage, I now have 1406 DPM if I'm continuously firing the third round in the magazine. It's not really the most efficient way to play this tank, but it does improve it to a level which is pretty decent, and it's better than the Peugeot 46 and Basante C45 when I fully kitted it out in a similar way. And reload now on the first shell that you reload into the magazine, 15.36 seconds, which is still an extremely long amount of time for 360 alpha damage, 13.9 seconds for the second shell, and for the last shell it's 11.7 seconds, meaning that if you're using your single shotgun, you've got to wait 11.7 seconds to fire that 316 over and over again, and that gives you that 1846 damage per minute. Bear in mind, obviously, you've got to include things like your intra-clip reload into that, moving around the battlefield, so you're probably not going to be affecting you too much if you play it as a support kind of style, but it's definitely something to bear in mind. In terms of my consumables, I run advanced, or the large repair kit I should say, a large med kit, and I also run a food consumable to boost my view range and also to boost my DPM and gun handling just that little bit more. But that's enough talking about the AMBT compared to the Peugeot 46 and the Basante C45. I've got 3 gameplays for you, and I'm going to start off with a game where I am bottom tier. So we're now into the first game of today's video, and we're here bottom tier on Arctic region, and we are defending an assault. So being bottom tier, I'm going to be playing very passively due to the poor DPM and the armour that this tank has. Although it's pretty troll, it won't hold up against many tier 9 or 10 rounds. So I'm going to be setting up a defensive location and supporting my mediums and heavy tanks from sort of mid to long range, and using the great shell velocity that this tank has to not have to lead my targets too much at these distances. We get a lovely snapshot there into the AMX 13105 to start the game off, doing 368 damage, and you'll see here just the absolutely terrible DPM that this tank has. But if you do just fire that first shell, or the third shell, when you're empty, the third shell that you'll reload over and over again, it is kind of manageable. You have that 3-second intraclick reload plus that sort of 8.7 reload on the shell, and then you're good to go again. So 11.7 seconds, I believe, when I'm not using the food consumable. And then if I have that food consumable activated, that will drop down just a little bit more, and it's a little bit more worthwhile. But you're seeing how painful it is when you miss those shells. It just means that you have to wait an incredibly long time, and it can be frustrating. And there's times using the auto-reloading mechanic, and you'll have found this if you have played the Peugeot 46 or the Pesante C45 or any of the Italian auto-reloaders, things like the Rinoceronte, that kind of stuff in the tech tree. It can be extremely frustrating when you're missing shells, and you want to sort of make up for it by hitting the next shell, but if you just continuously fire, you're going to wreck your DPM, and you're not going to have those good games that you are hoping for. So it's best just to stay patient. Patience is the key to playing this tank, positioning yourself and not getting isolated, and that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, because you want to be as active as you can, influence the battle when you can, but you've got to pick your moments, and because you have the ability to use it like an autoloader, you have those moments when you can finish tanks off, when you can take a tank from sort of 3/4 health, half health, and just completely finish them off, and that's the way you're going to influence the battle. And auto-reloaders are great for picking up kills. You'll see, I think, in these replays, I get quite a few kills just because I'm waiting for those moments when I can influence a battle, take out tanks, take guns out of the game, and that's the way that I've had some pretty good results in this tank so far. It might not be the best sort of damage that I'm going to get in a tier 8 premium medium tank, but I'm just making it work, and it is a challenge. This tank won't be for everyone, but I think it's still going to have a pretty good win rate, because I think people are just going to have to be forced to play passively in this tank, and the players that play passively and the more experienced players will boost the numbers of this tank up. So I wouldn't expect it to be buffed, although you never know. We're always hoping for those Italian auto-reloading buffs, even more than they've already done already. So we're just staying in this position. We got an overlook of the western flank as well as towards the south, and we get a full clip there into the AMBT. I dumped the full clip there into that AMBT purely because he wasn't looking at me. I didn't feel like I was going to be able to fire if I was continuously firing the first shell. I didn't feel like I was going to be able to fire again for a long time. So that's the time when you want to dump your clip, when you know that you're safe. I've got company with me to the left of me in the form of an Object 268 version 5, so I know if someone rushed me that I'm going to have a bit of help. Then I could have waited for the whole clip to reload again, but that's a tier 10 tank destroyer in the form of the FE 4005, and that's a very dangerous tank, so any hit points that I can help my team take off that tank, the better. You can play this like a 2-shot autoloader or a 3-shot autoloader, given the right sort of circumstance, and this is the kind of time when it is kind of acceptable to do so when you're bottom tier and you're just trying to chunk down your enemies. It's a slower game. We don't have to move forward and assault, we just have to defend our base. We take a speculative shot there, which is kind of risky with this low DPM, but again, I feel safe in this position, and I'm just trying to help out where I can with my team, and I'm going to work with this 268 version 5 to my left, and that's something you're always going to want to take into account. You're going to need support with this tank. Don't rush off on your own, although you probably won't get there because you're extremely slow, but if you do manage to get forward and get there, then it can be, it can lead to your downfall, because once you fired all your shells or something like that where you miss, if you don't have support like I did, that 268 version 5, that light tank could have come around, put 3 shots into me, and I could have been, you know, a one shot for a tank then, especially in a tier 9 or a tier 10 game. And luckily I managed to have some pretty decent games, bottom, mid and top tier, which you're going to see in this review, so it gives you an indication of how this tank performs. We get a shot into that Death Star as he's coming around, tried to track him for my Object 268 version 5, and now we're just going to back round over this ridge line, having a few problems with the sort of slippery rocks, or the rock mechanics, which are really frustrating in this game. But I let my 268 version 5 take out that Death Star. I didn't want to nudge him. Now I'm going to go forward and take out that Tiger 2, who unfortunately did put a shot into that 268 version 5, but we do take him out. And just by helping our team support both of these different flanks, it looks like we are in the lead now. So I've got 4 hit points at the end of the game. I'm going to use the mobility that I've boosted using my commander and equipment setup, I'm going to try fire a speculative shot, see if I get spotted by that FE 4005, and then I'm going to move on and try and get some assistance. Late in the game, I can take, you know, a good 1 or 2 shots depending on what tank it is. I can only take one if it's the FE 4005, but I'm just going to go forward, see if I can get some extra XP out of this battle, and that's what I like to do when I'm playing any auto-reloader, but especially this auto-reloader here. So gonna wait. You can see that aim time is very long even with my commander and equipment setup. I'm gonna wait for as long as possible before I feel like I'm gonna have to reload. Gonna chance a shot there, and we managed to get 2 out of 3 into that FE 4005. He's jumped into the lake. Looks like he's gonna drown himself by accident or by design. Doesn't really matter. We managed to get some damage assistance from spotting, and also 2 damage shots into the end in the end of this game, which I'm happy about. And now we're going to flank up behind this last remaining medium tank. I'm going to try and get my second shell in before I engage, so I can at least get 2 shells into this atomic. We get 1 in, he's coming for us, but the chisel takes him down as he's coming in. And that's it for that game. So 3.6k direct damage, 776 assistance. We finish MVP when we're bottom tier, 1 kill. That's a first class mastery badge. Haven't got the mastery yet. 1543 base experience points, and an all-round decent game, making 140,298 silver profit. So we're going to head on now into a game where I am mid tier. So we're now into a game where we are mid-tier. There's a few tier rates and also about 5 or 6 tier 9s on either side, and 1 artillery aside, which isn't too bad because this tank doesn't take kindly, well, any tank doesn't really take kindly to artillery. This one, because you're quite slow for a medium, it's hard to avoid those artillery shells sometimes because of your sort of just grunting the engine all round top forwards and backward speeds. It can be quite frustrating on maps like Prokhorovka, things like that, where they're open and there's not too much hard cover. So we're going to race forward as quickly as the AMBT can and try and get into a position to overlook our teammates that are spotting for us. I can be maybe slightly more aggressive than I was in the previous game where we are bottom tier, but I do have to bear in mind that there's some high penetration tanks or rounds coming in from tanks on the enemy team, and tier 9 tanks can be exceptionally dangerous, just like tier 10s can. Some of the tier 9s are better than the tier 10s in my opinion. Maybe that's an idea for a different video, but we're going to come up here on this hill. We're going to overlook the north of this map, and I also get a nice sight line down this bridge, and I can see people if they do come towards the west and through the south. And I'm just going to play the sniping role again to start off the battle. I'm going to try and get some early damage and chunk the enemies off. Unfortunately, we missed our first 2 shells, which is really painful, and it's so annoying, and some people won't like this kind of gameplay. I guess it might be boring for a lot of people. Myself, I like to have the DPM. I like to be firing single shot mainly. However, for some reason, Autoreloaders just seem to work for me sometimes, because I think it just trains me to play a little bit more patient, stay in the battle for a bit longer. And I found that once I've played an Autoreloader for a while, I end up sort of playing a lot better in my other tanks, and it's just maybe a good way for maybe not new players, but players that want to transition into learning not to be so aggressive, go balls deep and YOLO people. These kind of tanks are good for training you to do that, because you do have that capacity to fire the autoloader when needed, and you can fire the single shot and train yourself to be more patient and pick your targets and choose them more carefully. But like I said in the first replay, I think that newer players will struggle in this tank, and the veteran players, experienced players, or players that just have a lot of practice or really like the Autoreloaders will excel in it. It's not really that good, in my opinion, as a premium tank because of the low penetration on the standard APCR rounds. However, if you're not afraid to fire quite a lot of premium ammunition or premium APCR, you do get that boosted shell velocity, which is absolutely phenomenal. And if you let it fully aim in, it's very hard to miss when you're leading at long ranges. You just have to watch out for that aim time. Making profit, you can do it like you saw in the last replay, but there are probably better tanks out there, or I know there are better tanks out there for the majority of the player base to choose if you're looking for a medium tank at tier 8, premium medium tank in World War II, and make you a lot more money. But yeah, it's a unique tank. It's pretty funky looking. I like the look of it. It's got some trouble armour, which you might see during these replays, bouncing the occasional round. It's definitely not to rely on, but when you're hold down, they can only see your sort of turret. You can bounce rounds, especially if you're top tier. You can be a lot more aggressive side scraping and using your 9 degrees of gun depression, but we're still floating around here in this game. We've got 1427 damage. It's quite a nice alpha damage for a tier 8 premium tank. Unfortunately our tank sort of lurched up there. I think that's just my bad, meaning that we're going to have to fall back and reload with this rock to my right, and it looks like that light tank's just disconnected, and I'm going to go for the easy damage on this light tank. I want to get him out of the game because firstly I just want to make silver, I want to have a good game. Secondly, he's still going to be spotting me, he's going to be spotting my teammates, so it's best to get him out of the game so I can progress in this game. So we're going to aim in for as long as possible just to get the kill on this LT432, make sure of that of our second shell, then we're going to hide, reload, and then we're going to try and defend our base from teammates that are flanking down the eastern side of the map, because there's only one tank destroyer down there. So I'm going to try and cover him. It can be frustrating when people are asking for support with you and you're sat here and it looks like you're not paying attention. I mean, you are, but there's only so much you can do with this DPM. We're going to see if we can get a shot into this KV4. We managed to get a shot into the rear of the KV4 because he's side on. We're firing our premium rounds now, which have more than enough penetration to go through a KV4. And we're going to try and be patient, try and be as sort of safe as possible, go in for the first shell and fire it like a single shot to preserve our DPM as long as possible. And then we're just going to relocate down here to get a shell into this Leo as he crosses. You'll see here that the bloom is really long. Again, that's another patience thing. We track that Leo in place. I'm going to see if he's still there, I believe. See if I can spot him. You'll see the view range here I'm struggling with. It's sort of just about around 450 meters, wasn't it, I think. It's still not very good for a tier 8 medium tank, but we managed to spot the Leo. We get a tracking shot into him. For some reason our gun jerks, that must be a bug. But we have that second shot to follow up and take him out, and that's one of the really nice things about Autoreloaders, is that even though you have that poor DPM, you do have that capacity to have those second or third rounds if you miss your first shell to take out tanks that are on low health. It just gives you that insurance policy. It does ruin your DPM, but it means that you're able to you're able to get the shell and get the kill off and preserve your hit points as well. Unfortunately though, for our tank destroyer, he gets taken out defending our base while we are reloading. That's one thing that can be really frustrating, and it does sometimes becomes kind of like a conundrum. When do you fire, when do you not? That's up to you. It just comes with practice, knowing when you want to preserve your shots or when you can fire, or when you feel you're safe. Things like now, like a KV4 is not going to be able to chase me down. We have just enough mobility, especially when we've boosted it with our commander and equipment setup, to outrun him should we need to dump all our shells and run. But we're just going to go around, see if we can get the final couple of shells into these tanks and finish this round off. It looks like it's going to be another win for this tank. Get our second shell into KV4, take him out, and then we're going to try and get our last shell off the game into the Iron Rain. Felt like we had to snap it in because that tank was coming forward. And we take him out, taking our damage total to 3.6k damage. We finish MVP again with 5 kills, which is also very nice. 74,000, nearly 75,000 silver profit because we fired quite a lot of APCR, premium APCR. And yeah, an all-round good game in when we are mid-tier. So now I'm going to see how we can do when we are bottom tier, and show you how this tank performs when it is hopefully going to be more influential. So we're into the third and final game of the video. We're here on Malinovka, and we are top tier, and there's quite a few tier 7s, so hopefully we're going to be able to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm not going to be reckless because this tank doesn't allow you to be, any Autoreloader doesn't allow you to be because of the DPM, but our armour should be more useful in a matchup like this, and we're going to see how we can get on. So we're going to try and head to the top of the hill. I must be thinking of money for some reason. We're going to head to the top of the hill. We're going to see if we can spot anyone up there and see if we can get shots into the centre of the map where the light tanks and medium tanks and tank destroyers like to sit and snipe or try and spot. And you'll see here that the mobility is a little bit better when we've boosted it. It's not too bad for getting up on the hill, but the Pantera, which is the Tech Tree Italian medium Autoreloader, is faster than us, and we are struggling to sort of keep pace above some of the heavies that are coming up behind us. It's kind of, it's somewhere in between a medium and a heavy in terms of its mobility. It could be a lot better, but I suppose it could be a lot worse. You kind of have to play it like that hybrid heavy medium tank, and it that kind of teaches you to play that more passive sort of support style gameplay that you need with the Autoreloaders anyway. So it isn't too bad at all. We're just trying to sit in this position. We're not spotted, so we're hopefully safe from artillery unless he blind fires for some random reason. We're going to boost our view range using the food consumable and see if we can spot out towards the centre and get a shot into one of these light tanks. For some reason we just shot the ridge there. I don't know whether that was the accuracy or whether there's some kind of weird hitbox there with that ridge. Either way, we're going to move on. We got spotted when we fired, and we're going to just go up the hill a bit further, see if we can get a shell on anything that is sitting in the centre, and then hopefully we can push forward and spot down the eastern line, down the 0 line, and see if we can spot out anything hiding in the back. I found that with this tank, like there, if you're kind of like half aimed or just over half aimed, this tank usually hits with its accuracy. It's behaved pretty well for me, but when you do fire fully bloomed out with your aim time, this tank does struggle, and yeah, it blooms out like a pineapple between every shot, so you have to bear that in mind. Although you do have that sort of 3-second intricate reload to sort of cool things down, aim back in your shells, re-aim, and yeah, if you're leading a target at sort of long distances, try not to move it too quickly. For those of you that have sort of high sensitivity, because the bloom with dispersion moves quite a lot. You'll see here that it took me ages to get that shell. When I finally did, I wasn't able to penetrate the Tiger 1. That's the shell drop off on the APCR over distance, and that's why it's highly recommended that I'm just going to fire premium APCR from now on after I've recorded this video, because the penetration just drops off so much, and when you're playing that support sort of medium tank role, you're firing at mid to long ranges, you're going to want that penetration over distance because you don't have a heat round to fire, and that's something that maybe this tank would have benefited from. It would have been nice to have a premium heat round and have the premium APCR round that's on now like drop down a little bit in terms of penetration, but put as its standard round. But yeah, this is the sort of setup that you have coming over from PC in terms of the rounds and stuff, so I guess we can't argue with that too much. And from what I see, it seems to be performing kind of okay on the battlefield. There's not very many, and I think that just shows how difficult sometimes, or what a challenge and a frustrating tank it can be to play when you're playing Autoreloaders. Maybe people have experienced it with the Progetto 46 and the Basante C45, and they thought that they're not going to bother, but being the first American Autoreloader, it might appeal to some. So maybe we'll see some more coming up. I think it's a relatively reasonable price, but now there's so many deals of the week and offers on, you never know whether it's worth purchasing, and I think cobalt premiums are much more valuable these days because they make so much more silver. But that's enough rambling. In terms of this game, we've managed to get some shots on top of the hill. Now we're going to use our mobility. We're going to go forwards here into the centre of the map, see if we can spot out. I'm pretty confident that there's enough ridgelines for me to hide and just show my turret. I have a good enough view range to spot tanks like that citadel there that's hiding behind that building. We're just going to extend our view range out, get some assistance at the end of this battle, push forward. I'm more confident we're winning this battle if I push forward, light up some tanks, and hopefully it's just going to push us over the edge and we're going to win the game quite comfortably. So we're going to try and get a shell into that C52 lease on the move there. Stopped for a brief second actually, but we missed due to that massive bloom that this tank has. So yeah, again, bear in mind, keep that in mind when you're trying to play this tank. If you've got this tank and you're firing, you do have to wait for a while for it to aim in, because it can be quite unruly in terms of its gun handling. But chanced it there on the move with our second shell, which is risky due to the DPM, but we managed to get a final kill. And now we're just spotting out these tanks, trying to take them out. That Jagdpanther 2 gets taken out. We spot this C52 lease to our left, get one shot into him. We were going to go for the ram kill because we're a relatively weighty medium tank. We would have probably had enough to finish him off. And now it's all about trying to get shells into this sentinel here. So I could choose to reload the third, but I feel like I'm not going to have another chance to fire. So we get one in. I'm going to aim for as long as possible, get the last shot in, empty our clip, take that sentinel AC4 out. And that's the last kill of the game, where we finished MVP, 4 kills, 3.1k direct damage, 2095 assistance. We get a high caliber and a first class again, 1519 base XP, And yeah, another good game, making 124,249 silver profit. So we've managed to do a little bit more damage because we're top tier, or combined damage I should say, be a bit more influential, and that's kind of how you have to play this tank. So I hope you found this review useful in terms of how to play Autoreloaders in general, and whether or not you might want to take up Wargaming on their offer of the AMBT. Once again, thank you all so much for waiting around whilst I was off for 2 weeks. Now the content can be flowing again, and until next time, I shall see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.